technology, art, entertainment. My name is Paul, and today we're doing a bit of a different sketch. The sketch we're doing is a 3D sketch in a program I like to use called Sculptris. Now, in this one, I'm sketching a very humanoid character, but I'm not going to tell you who the character is just because, it'd be fun to guess. At the end, I do reveal it, so if you can't wait, you can look at the end of the video. I use Sculptris instead of ZBrush to do basic starting out anatomy and sketching, essentially, because it has a very, very quick workflow. It doesn't slow down at all. It doesn't matter how complicated the geometry that you're using is. It simply doesn't slow down. And it uses easily every core in my system, and so that is fantastic, whereas ZBrush will slow down very quickly if you have lots of geometry. What I'm doing in this program is essentially blocking out basic geometric details, and it will add in more detail and geometry where I need it. So if I need more triangles or more geometry in a certain area for an effect, it'll add it in, and I have a lot of control over that. What I'm doing is sculpting a human face. I'm not going to go into detail on the body at all. I'm just sculpting essentially a bust, anything above the neck. Now, this particular character has a lot of wrinkles and folds in his skin, and it makes for a really fun sketch. A lot of artists like to draw old, wrinkly people because it really it helps you practice the folds of the face, whereas a young person who doesn't have a lot of surface detail, so to speak, in their face, it's not as much of a challenge. And if you can do an old person really well, it helps you understand the bones of the face and things like that. This particular character is around 60 years old, so he's not completely elderly, but he's definitely an older gentleman. And he has a very, very long horse-like face, and it's very unsettling, the sort of character he is. He has a very unsettling, almost stoic, unemotional face. Now, one of the things I like to do when doing faces is think of the skull underneath the face. It's imperative that you work within the confines of a human skull and see where that's going to take you. And right here, I'm what am I doing? I'm doing the eyes. That's right. Because in order to design the eyes correctly, you have to put them in place, or else you'll design very two-dimensional, unconvincing eyes. So the eyelid around the eye is a very three-dimensional shape. It doesn't just go in two different directions. It wraps around the eye in a very, very spherical fashion. So if you don't do it correctly, the eyes can turn out looking very, 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 very silly and alien. A bit like they're looking right now before I adjust the eyelids a bit. And you have to make sure that the eyes are the correct distance apart. The general rule of thumb is that each eye has an invisible eyeball between it, and that's about how far apart they are. So, and another trick I learned with noses is that a lot of people like to put a lot of detail into the nostrils of the nose, and the truth is the nostrils don't actually exist. The nostrils are just a point where the nose connects. The center of the nose connects to the two sides of the nose. Essentially, if you think about it like that, and essentially the nostrils just sort of are where a hole is, you can better understand the anatomy of a nose. It's kind of a bit of a silly statement, but the nose is once you understand the basics of how to design one, it's actually not that much of a challenge at all. Now, the mouth on this particular character really had me frustrated because this character has a very, like I said, stoic, unemotive mouth. He doesn't smile or scowl or grin or smirk or grimace. He has no emotion in his mouth, so it's very, very difficult to get that correct. But he also has this sort of very sterile look in his face, and the mouth can tell a lot about that. So the reason I change materials like this is because each one demonstrates a different lighting. So materials in Sculptris are basically your lighting, your surface detail, everything. It's all in the material. So I can change material to get a different angle of light. In 3D, you often rotate things around like a madman, and it took me a while to realize why 3D artists do this, because I do it all the time. I rotate a mesh around like crazy without adding any detail to it, but it's actually because you're looking at a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object. You can't actually get any depth without rotating it around a lot. It's sort of like how a bird will move their head about to get better depth perception. It's what 3D artists do. We rotate the thing around quite a bit. We don't go directly to the spot that we need to edit. We flip it around, rotate it, scale it, all sorts of stuff so that we get a better understanding of the three-dimensional contours and forms that we're working with. Because just something that's purely two-dimensional is very deceiving. It can be very, very, it can be a lot flatter or a lot more round than we intend. And without flipping the model around like a madman, you don't quite understand what's going on there. Now, the neck here is really hard to do without connecting the neck to a set of shoulders, because people think the neck is just a cylinder. It's not. It's really complicated. There's a whole bunch of muscles and bones that go into the neck. And so essentially you have to make the neck is really just part of the shoulders, part of the back, and part of the head. And you have to connect them right. And doing a bust like this character wears a suit, so the actual neck is obscured mostly by a collared shirt. Now, I was having trouble with my tablet here. It's a Wacom tablet. It's a really good quality tablet, but the software sometimes decides to turn itself off. So if you occasionally see me completely stop for some reason, it's probably because my Wacom tablet decided to stop. And I don't know why that happens. It's such an infrequent problem, and I'm so good at dealing with it at this point that I no longer wish to try to fix it. In case you were wondering, this is not real time. This video will probably turn out to be around 15 minutes long, and it's a sped up version of me taking about an hour and a half to do this particular bust sketch. So cheekbones are a bit of a pain in the ass, because when you're old, your skin starts to sag off your face, and the muscles of your jaw start to recede a bit inward, and your cheekbones are much more pronounced. Now, the cheekbones are actually part of the orbits of your eye. They're not particularly part of your cheeks or anything like that. They just are in that place, but they're really there to hold your eyes and your eye muscles in place. And they wrap around the jaw muscles. Just putting in a tear duct here. Just a little bit of extra detail adds life to it. One of the things that I wanted to do with this one is the eyebrows, when they go over the eyelids, they actually form like a little ceiling, like an awning over the eyelids. A lot of people have the eyebrows sort of just as a two-dimensional detail added to the face, but if you really want that depth in the character, you have to make the eyebrows sort of very much protrude over the eyes. One of the reasons why you can't look directly up without moving your head is because your eyebrows are in the way. If you were to look straight up right now, you'd see your eyebrows. So you have to think about what that would look like from a third-person view. Made his eyes look a bit too evil there. He's not supposed to look evil. Even though he is a very evil sort of character, you don't really know. There's my tablet failing again. And but yeah, the character's supposed to look not like he intends to do evil, but rather that he's just, being himself. Just doing a bit of smoothing out. As you can see, the likeness and the form of the character is coming in. Now I'm just doing little details here and there. I won't be adding every pore of skin detail in Sculptris. You really want to add tons of detail in ZBrush. I might take this model into ZBrush to do a bit more detail and get it more lifelike. See if I can bring it into Unreal Engine to make it like game ready. I don't know if I have the time to do that sort of stuff. An asset like this, you're watching the quickest part of the creation of this asset. This is the easiest and the funnest part. To bring a 3D asset into a game engine, you have to do a whole lot more than what you see me doing here. You have to add a lot of extra detail. You have to create a low poly mesh. You have to UV map that mesh. You have to make sure you have to bake the textures in there. You have to make sure the textures are the right color and the right dimensions. Essentially, the normal map can't be too severe. You have to, if you find any problems at that point, then you have to go back to the high-res model and start all over again. And then once you get in the engine, you just have to make sure that all the textures look properly in the engine. Even if the engine's a physics-based engine, you really have to worry about how the textures are going to interact. You might make a texture that looks exactly like skin, then you get into the engine and it looks like rubber, and you're wondering why. And then you have to figure out what's causing that. And it could be an issue with how you modeled the asset. It could be an issue with the textures. It could be an issue with the materials. Some things you have control over, some things you don't. So this what you're seeing here is the real fun part. And I think I'm adding on ears at this point. Ears are a lot of fun. I'm not going to put too much detail into these ears. The reason I have them as a separate object is because it just makes it a lot easier to edit them and move them around versus having them part of the original mesh. And filtering them in and make them part of the original mesh in a different program is really easy. Ears, I'm still not 100% on. A lot of artists kind of miss out on doing ears properly because it's something you don't really pay attention to. So a lot of artists sort of skimp on the ears. I've gone a bit better with ears in terms of drawing them and making them look convincing, in 5 seconds or so. But then going into 3D and modeling ears, it's another challenge, and I don't do the best here. But hey, this is just a quick little project. I might do an ear study where I do 15 ears in a row, and you guys can all be enlightened by my ear prowess in the future, but not now. I'm just doing a basic ear. One thing with older people is that certain parts of your body continue to grow. Take, for instance, your skull stops growing at a certain age. Your eyes actually, I think, after a very young age, we're talking like a few months, your eyes never stop growing. Or rather, your eyes stop growing after a certain age. It's one of the reasons why babies look like they have such huge eyes, is because their eyes are the same size then as they will be when they're adults. I'm just adding a bit of hair here. The hair will probably, if it was a game asset, be handled entirely by a different mesh with, either two-dimensional cards that look like hair. There's a lot of different ways to do hair. I hate doing hair in 3D. It's a pain in the ass. I've never been able to do it right. There are people who specifically have jobs for doing hair in 3D. And he's starting to come into likeness. If you don't know who he is now, chances are you haven't played the game that he's from. So, but anyway, hair in a modeling aspect, you just have the hair there just as a placeholder. You're not putting a bunch of detail into it. You're just making it look roughly like hair so that people know where their hairline is, what sort of hairstyle this person would have. It's not meant to look realistic. Essentially, it crashed. So Sculptris has an awesome autosave feature that allows you to basically, it saves within the last 5 seconds. So when it crashes, you can basically keep on going. If you notice this entire hour session, I don't save once. That's really bad. You don't want to get into that habit, especially as a professional artist. You can lose work and money doing that. But I'm reckless and, well, sometimes I'm a bit stupid. But anyway, as I continue doing this hair, I probably spend way more time doing this hair than I should, but whatever. It's a personal project. Trying to get the hair look just right. He looks a bit like Bill Nye right now, and no, it's not Bill Nye. But I think that's because of the way I have his hair set up. Bill Nye's a cool guy, by the way. If you don't like Bill Nye, then unsub. So anyway, his hairline has a bit too much of a widow's peak. The character does have a widow's peak, but it's not as pronounced. There we go. That's a bit better. And I think, change the materials around to make it, to get the lighting a bit different, because things look different in different light. As you can see, I'm making changes back to an area where I thought I was done because the lighting exposed a bit of detail that I hadn't added or details that I shouldn't have added. So you always want to look at different angles and different lighting and different materials to really bring out certain aspects of a model. And if you just look at it in one light, under one condition, you'll end up, when you bring it into a video game or something like that, where it's in a whole bunch of different situations, a whole bunch of different lighting conditions, it will really start looking a bit not what you imagined it to be. So it's always good to have in your process to look at things at different lighting, different angles, that sort of thing, using different materials. Now, I don't know what these wrinkles are, but the wrinkles that connect the nose to the bottom of the jaw. All I know is that in most cases, they should be as straight as possible. So they shouldn't be folding over and changing direction too much. Just adding a bit of forehead detail because I realized his forehead was almost reflective. It was so straight and smooth. The eyebrows, the muscles that connect the eyebrows, go all the way up to the top of your skull. So you have a bit of a protrusion from there. Adding a bit of eyebrow hair here, and it's hard to do in a program that has no actual texturing or anything like that, so I just use a rough sort of surface brush and then inflate and deflate as we go, and until it looks all right. And the eyebrows, that looks a bit messy, but I think that looks pretty good. That was the character I was looking to do, is G-Man from Half-Life. I think I did all right. Not perfect, but hey, I'm happy with the result, and it was a lot of fun to do. I might pick this up and do a bit more later on, but we'll see. Either way, thank you very much for watching this. I might do more 3D stuff in the future, but in the meantime, you all have a fantastic day.